Today I want to talk to you about the slogan of Handong. Right? So our slogan at Handong is, "Why not change the world?" And that sounds pretty cool, right? It's a nice slogan. Actually, the UN has adopted our slogan for the Academic Impact Forum. They asked former President Kim if they could borrow it because they thought it was such a nice word to use, such a nice slogan. So I think a lot of us have come here because we want to do that. We want to change the world. And we believe it's possible. Okay. So if you don't think so, if you think it's just kind of a nice slogan, but it's just a kind of a marketing gimmick, right? Why not change the world? Sounds good, draw in students. Okay, I can tell you that the professors are not here for that reason. The professors are here because we believe that you guys can change the world. We have a lot of faith in you. But how exactly does this happen? Okay, how exactly are you going to be able to change the world? Well, from my point of view, my background actually is in leadership, so that they say to a hammer everything looks like a nail, right? So if you have a certain specialty, you see it everywhere. But I see this as truly a leadership issue. Not that the leaders are doing a bad job, but not enough people stand up to be leaders. So if you want to change the world, you have to be willing and have the courage to step into a leadership position. That's the only way you're going to change the world. Okay, you're not going to change the world if you just go someplace and you're just following along with the crowd and you're just, doing the everyday kind of thing and just getting by and making money, and that's not going to help change the world. If you say, when you look at the world around us, we can see it's very, very broken. There are so many problems. So many times that there's so many problems, it's very discouraging. That we say, how could I possibly do anything about this? And some of these problems are huge problems. They're very big problems. And you just say, what could I possibly do? Well, I want to encourage you a bit today that you can change the world. It is very possible. Okay, and we have faith that you will. But you have to be willing. You have to have the mindset. When you see a problem, what most people do when they see a big problem is they look at it and go, that's terrible. Somebody should do something about this. Right? Maybe that's the same question you ask when you see something. Okay, even around campus. Oh, this doesn't work very well. Somebody should do something about this. Somebody should fix this problem. Well, as Handong students, what I'm hoping that you'll do if you come across that kind of situation is you say, this is terrible. Somebody should do something about this. Why not me? Maybe I should do something about this. Okay, so just starting to have that idea. Why not me? Why couldn't I do something about this? Okay, and a lot of people think, oh, this is too big a task. It's too much for me to handle. Okay, but I would like to go through a few steps that I think we could do. So next, I got the clicker here. I can do this. All right, if it works. Nope, it's disconnected. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so anybody know who he is? Okay, he's actually quite famous. Just to give you a couple of his things, he was on Time's Most Influential Teens of 2014. He was nominated for Time's Person of the Year for 2014. He was recognized by Fortune magazine as one of the world's greatest leaders in 2015. Okay, and do you know how old he was in 2014? He was 17. Okay, when he started doing what he, became famous for. So next slide. Well, next click anyway. It's the same slide, but there we go. Okay, so that's pretty big. So it says his name is Joshua Wong. Okay, so he's Christian. Many people that know who he is don't know that about him. Okay, he's raised in a Christian family. His dad took him around to see, disadvantaged people, and he got a real passion that he should do something, okay, that he should step forward and help. He should, take that leadership position. Okay, and he says, and this is a quote from him, he says, "The Bible teaches us that we need to fight for justice, and Christians bear the responsibility to be salt and light in society. We have more obligation and a more important role in the world other than being just a normal citizen in society who wants to earn money." Okay, so he was very famous because if you know much about Hong Kong, in 2014, there were a lot of very large protests. Okay, so I don't want to get into the politics of it, but he ended up starting a movement called the Umbrella Movement, or the Umbrella Revolution. Okay, he was one of the very key players in starting out these protests. If you go to the next. Okay, so known for prominent role during 2014 Umbrella Revolution, the number of protesters peaked at more than 100,000 people protesting. And parts of Hong Kong were closed for 79 days. These protests went on for months. Okay, and it basically started with him, a 17-year-old high school student who just felt he should do something. He saw a problem, and he thought he should do something about it. So if a 17-year-old high school student can, rally 100,000 people to shut down parts of Hong Kong for, 79 days, okay, then why not you? Okay, why couldn't you do something? Now, the next slide says, "You are the light of the world." This is the verse that he was referring to. And this is what the Bible calls us to do. Okay, the Bible calls us to be the light of the world. Okay, and it's worth reading the whole thing out. It says, a town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So this is our calling. Okay, we are to be the light of the world, and you don't hide it under a bowl. Okay, it's supposed to be prominent. It's supposed to be visible. Okay, it's going to stand out. So that's a tough thing to do, right? It's tough to stand out. It's tough to be different. Okay, but if you want to make a change, you have to be willing to step forward and be there all by yourself for a while until you can gather some supporters. Okay, so that makes the difference between somebody who can change the world and somebody who's just going to ride along. So, we say, why not change the world? And one of the big themes of this semester is why not change Handong? Right? So you don't have to go out and start a 100,000-man protest tomorrow. Okay, what you could do is start trying to find ways here. Okay, join in. Be willing to step forward. You don't need an official position. You don't need to be named team leader to make things happen. You don't need to be on student council. You don't need to be part of ISU, the International Student Union. I highly recommend going to those places, okay, especially ISU. I'm the faculty advisor, so I have a special place in my heart for ISU. But when we have ISU meetings and I meet with those people, they're all volunteers. They're there with a passion to make a difference. And I'm looking forward to seeing what those students in ISU are going to do when they graduate and they go out into the world, because they step forward every day with ideas about ways to make a difference, ways to change things, and they're willing to try. So that's the attitude that's going to change the world. So, we have these student council elections coming up. So this is the period when you decide, do I want to run for the student council? Okay, that's a good first step. Okay, get involved. Come to our ISU meeting tonight, 8 o'clock. You can talk to me about it if you want to join. Okay, so find some way. Okay, but it doesn't have to be something official. That's the big issue. Okay, nobody named Joshua Wong the official, organizer of the Umbrella Revolution protests. Okay, he just said he thought something should be done. He was kind of a leader of another movement already kind of thing, but you don't have to have any official title. All you have to do is say, something should be done, and I want to do something about it. Okay, now don't be too afraid of the idea that, wow, what can I do? I'm just one person. Right? Next slide. Okay, here's a very interesting quote. Okay, it says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." So it doesn't take, you don't have to gather 100,000 people to begin with. Okay, all you need is one person to start. One person with a passion for making a difference can do this. So there's a short video. Some of you may have seen it before. Okay, it was a viral video a ways back. It's one of Professor Lantinga's favorite videos on YouTube. Okay, so if we can start that up. Maybe? Maybe not? Okay, here it comes. Okay, so there's this guy. He's just out there. This is at a music festival. So he's just dancing like an idiot, right? Not particularly talented dancer, okay, but he has passion. So he's out there all by himself. Okay, and then a second person decides that he's got a good idea, okay, and then they join them, but still just the two of them, okay, right, out there dancing like fools. Neither one professionals, obviously. Okay. Real obviously. Okay. And then they're just having fun, just having a good time. And then around this time, I think person number 3 decides they've got a good idea and comes in. And there's something kind of magical about 3. Once you get to 3, that seems to be something of a tipping point. And once you get 3 people in a movement, okay, and they're doing something, that seems to be the point at which people say, now you've got a group, now things are really happening, hey, I want to join too, okay, and then more, and then more, and then more, okay, until pretty much everybody is up. Okay. Everybody wants to get involved once it's a big thing going on, okay. Now it doesn't take any courage, everybody's doing it, okay. So as the video goes on and on, you can see that pretty much everybody on that hill ends up being dancing. Okay, more and more and more. So, how does that get started? Right? Where did that come from? Where did this whole thing happen? Okay, I think this video is kind of interesting because you can see it happening. It's just one guy on his own to begin with. Okay, but he had the courage to do something different. Okay, we can turn that off now. It's everybody's out there now, and it's getting loud. So, okay, but he had the courage to do something different, right? To be different, to stand out. Okay, that's the hard part, right? That's the tough thing. Most people want to blend in, be like everybody else. Okay, especially in collectivist cultures. Like Korea or China, Japan, okay, I mean, even in Western cultures where being unique is seen as a real virtue and standing out is something of a virtue, people still don't want to do that, okay? People still like to be different, but in kind of similar ways to other people. They want to seem unique, but not really unique, just a little different. People like to be part of a group. So it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage, okay, to stand out like that and to be that city on the hill, letting your light shine before others. That takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery. Okay, it takes a little less bravery, but still quite a lot of courage to be the second person, right, who joins them and gets up there. And less as things progress. Okay, actually, by the end, people who are still sitting down start feeling stupid because they're the only ones sitting down. So they all start joining in and jumping on, the bandwagon, being part of the crowd. Okay, but it all started with that one guy who had the courage to stand up and do something different when nobody else was doing it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, he probably had some chemical assistance with that courage, I mean, from the looks of it, but but we don't need that, okay? We have the Word of God. So next slide, let's see if maybe this is working now. Nope, still not working for me. Okay, yep. So the Bible tells us to be courageous, right? The Bible tells us not to be afraid. In one movie, I remember them saying that it says, like, don't be afraid in the Bible 365 times. I'm not sure if that's actually true. I can't find, like, a really good reference for that. But anyway, it does say it, quite a few times, and only once is enough. So in 2 Timothy 1:7, okay, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. Okay, and his exhortation to Joshua, okay, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So particularly if you feel God tugging on your heart to do something, and a lot of times I think that's what it is. When you see a situation, and it's a little different for each of us. God gives each of us a heart for a certain particular issue sometimes, or different kinds of issues. But when you start seeing something and you say, wow, that's terrible, somebody should do something about that. Okay, I think the Holy Spirit is there kind of nudging you, saying, why don't you do something about this? A lot of times we complain to God, why don't you do something about all these injustices in the world? Why don't you fix these problems? How can you allow these things to happen? Well, sometimes I think God is looking at us and asking the same question. I think he has a plan for these things, but he gives us the opportunity to walk with him in fixing them. But the big barrier is the fear. We're too afraid to stand out and be different. We're too afraid to do it. The enemy loves to tell us what we can't do. Fear is a prison of our own making. Right? Fear gets to define what we can do and what we can't do in our own mind. No, I couldn't do that. Why not? Because you're too afraid. You're letting fear rule your life. Sometimes I think people misuse the idea of giftings. So we have giftings. God gives us special talents and abilities, and he wants us to use those, but not as a crutch, not as an excuse. Right? So I hear people saying things like, no, I couldn't do that, it's not my gifting. I'm not gifted in that area. Or if God wanted me to do that, he would have gifted me in that area. Well, I think one of the reasons we're here and one of the things God wants us to do is grow and learn. Right? We're supposed to get better at things. We're supposed to try new things. So I've found in my life that God has very often called me to do things that I was not at all gifted at. Actually, I don't enjoy standing up in front of a large group of people. That's something, when I first started teaching here, I felt like I was going to throw up every time I had to do it. And all my classes in those days were 80-student classes. And every day I'd walk in feeling like I was going to throw up. So it wasn't something that I felt gifted at by any means, but it was something that I felt called to. Now, the easy thing to do is to say, no, that's not me, that's not who I am, I'm not gifted in that area, I can't do it. But that's just an excuse. Maybe this is some special area that God wants you to grow in, and you feel like you're not very good at it, but God wants you to be better at it. So he's calling you out in that area. So keep in mind, be courageous. Do not be afraid. Okay, don't let fear be your prison. Don't let fear put up walls that stop you from doing something great. If you feel God calling you to do something, then you should just say yes. you should submit. Put down your pride. Say, but I don't want to look stupid. Like that idiot dancing on the hillside. Okay? He looked pretty foolish, right? Okay? But he had courage to do it. Okay? And by the end, after 3 minutes, that video is 3 minutes long. So after 3 minutes, everybody was doing it. Okay, so don't let fear get in your way. Don't let fear be the thing that stops you. So what does leadership really look like? So today we're going to be anointing our team leaders. Okay, we're going to be celebrating our new team leaders. And hopefully we're going to get some people to step forward for student council and to serve in various areas. So what does this, leadership kind of look like? So next slide, I want to talk about this verse, okay, the one we read today. So Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." And the next slide, too, we'll go right to that one. The term servant leadership is used a lot. And Robert Greenleaf is the guy that actually started it back in the 1970s. He wrote an article about the servant as leader and coined the term servant leadership. So this is from his definition, okay, where it says, it begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. The difference manifests itself in the care taken by the servant, first to make sure that other people's highest priority needs are being served. So this definition talks about the motives. Why become a leader? And the verse says, the leaders of the Gentiles, they lord it over them and exercise authority over them. And that's why a lot of people want to become leaders in the secular world, because they want the power and the authority. They like that idea of leadership. But we are called to do it for a completely different reason. A servant leader is kind of a reluctant leader. They don't necessarily want to be a leader, but it's a way to serve. It's a way to help. In the management department where I work, it's always an interesting thing when we have to choose the next dean of the management departments. In a lot of universities, being the dean of the department is a very cherished spot. And people apply for it, and there's heavy competition for it. In our department, we go around going, "No, not me. I'm not. No, how about you? Nope, not me. I'm not." So eventually, somebody has to be almost their arm twisted to take that position. Okay, it's not something that anybody really wants to do. Nobody really wants to have that leadership position. Okay, but we need leaders. Okay, we need somebody who's willing to step forward and serve. Okay, and when we choose team leaders, the way I usually choose team leaders is I say, okay, freshmen, seniors, you guys can sit down. Everybody else, basically, you can describe to us in 2 minutes or less why you don't want to be leader. Okay, and whoever has the worst excuse, okay, we'll get the people that have the worst excuses, and then we'll line them up and vote for them. Okay, so it's kind of rare that we have a lot of volunteers. Hey, I want to be team leader. Okay, but that's okay. To be a servant leader is not somebody who's really ambitious, who's out to be, recognized as being a leader. They're not about that. Okay, but in the end, they decide, this is a way I can serve. Okay, but I do want to talk a little bit about what I call the Handong model of leadership, which I'm not a big fan of. Actually, when Greenleaf was writing his book, he became kind of a spiritualist later in life, but when he was actually writing his book, he admitted in an interview that the image in his head while he was writing it was Jesus washing his disciples' feet. He said, what a model of servant leadership, right? But what I call like the Handong model of servant leadership is it's what a lot of people think servant leadership is. So I find a lot of team leaders, they become team leader, and then they think, oh, now I'm the team leader and I have to serve my team, so they do everything by themselves. They take all the responsibility on themselves, and they plan everything out, and they do everything. Well, and then at the end of the semester, you talk to them about that, and they say, oh, that was horrible. I hated it. I was so busy all the time, and people just complained. They didn't like what I had planned and, different things. So it was terrible. I never want to do that again. Well, I have to, break it to them at that point, and it's because you're not being a leader. There's a lot of different definitions of leader, but all of them involve somebody following you. If nobody's following you, you're not a leader, right? So in that case, you're being a team servant. That's the servant part, but not the leadership part. Okay, so, and Jesus didn't model that, right? That's not the way Jesus did it. He wasn't washing their feet every day. Okay, he washed their feet kind of right at the end of his ministry, right? And they were kind of surprised by it. Okay, it wasn't something he was doing every day. He was showing that he was willing to do the dirtiest and most humble of jobs, but that wasn't an everyday thing. He was teaching them all the while, but they were busy, I think, right? I think he expected something of his disciples. They weren't just, following him around and he was serving out food every day and saying, oh, do you need anything? And right? So he came to serve and be a ransom for many, okay, but that's not real servant leadership. Real servant leaders are also leaders. Okay, so let's go with the next verse. Okay, we got some stuff here in Luke 9, 1 and 2 and 6. When he sends them out, he pairs them up and says, okay, now I've shown you what to do. You go do it. Okay, so he modeled it for them, he showed them, he taught them, and then he put them to work. Okay, he expected them to go out and do something about this. He expected them, to go out and make a difference. And then, in the next chapter in Luke 10, I don't have that verse here, but then he sends out, the 72. So they build this movement, okay, from him to the disciples and from the disciples to others. Okay, so it's not just him, acting as a servant all the time. He expected something from them. And in, businesses and different organizations where you see great servant leaders, you see that their organizations perform really well. Not because the servant leaders expect nothing from the people working for them. They expect a lot. Okay, servant leaders their number one priority is the best interests of their people, but that doesn't mean they get to sit around and do nothing while the person, brings them iced tea. Okay, they have great expectations of them. The wonderful thing about it is, a lot of times when you have a servant leader, the followers are very willing to do great things for them because they have such loyalty to somebody who cares about them so much. The next slide, we're getting towards the end. We're close, okay. I need to wrap this up by 6:30, I'm told. So here is the next part of what Greenleaf said about servant leadership. Okay, so the first part was that, you're interested in the best interests of the people who follow you, but this is the test. This is Greenleaf's test of servant leadership. So if you consider yourself a servant leader, this is what your test is. This is how you measure it. So it says the best test and difficult to administer is, do those served grow as persons? Do they grow while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? That doesn't happen if you just do everything for someone. A good servant leader is like a teacher or a parent. So imagine a parent telling their baby, When they see their baby trying to, stand up and start to walk, no, that's okay. You don't need to walk. I'll carry you everywhere. Okay, that's a servant attitude, but is that good for the child? No, of course not. That's going to hinder their development, right? They need to try. So what does a real servant leader do? The real servant leader, like a parent, you let the kids try things, but when they let the kids try and walk, what do? They're standing behind them, ready to catch them if they fall. That's what a real servant leader does. Okay, you try. Okay, you try it yourself. See if you can do it. Okay, and if they do it all by themselves and they succeed, hey, they go, I did it without any help. And the poor parent's standing back there going, oh, my back, because they've been like this for, 2 hours, chasing the kid around. Okay, waiting for them to fall and catching them when they do. That's the servant leader attitude. Do it, have high expectations of the people you're leading, okay? Engage them, involve them, let them try things. Even if you're expecting that it may be a bit challenging for them, okay, and maybe they're going to fail. Okay, then you follow behind. If you think they're, you check in with them. How are you doing? Everything going okay? You need any help with this? Is there, any questions? Okay, but you let them do it on their own. And if they do fail, how do you handle that? A servant leader isn't going to scream, them silly and sit there and yell at them saying, oh, you blew this one, and if you screw up again, I'm firing you. And okay, what can you learn from this? Okay, why did you fail? Let's look at it and try to do better next time. Okay, but servant leaders expect a lot out of the people that they're following. They should become more autonomous, more capable on their own. Okay, so they expect a lot from them. So in the next 2 minutes, well, I guess I have till 6:33, it says on the schedule, so I got like 5 more minutes. So I want to challenge the people here who are not leaders. Okay, if you're not a team leader, then this part is specifically for you. Okay, next slide. Okay, being a good follower. Actually, really good followers become really good servant leaders. There's almost no difference between the two. So what does it take to become a really good follower? Well, there's 2 axes here, right? So there's challenge and support. Or in different models, it's called independent critical thinking and being active. Okay, but basically what it means is really good followers think for themselves, but they support their leader. They think for themselves, but they support their leader. Okay, so there's different categories. There's people who think for themselves and don't support their leader, and those people are just critics. They complain all the time. They can see everything that the leader's doing wrong, but they don't try to help, they just complain. There's a lot of people like that. Okay, there are people who are very supportive, but don't think for themselves, and they're basically sheep who kind of follow around, and yes men who say, great idea, boss, no matter what they say. Okay, that's not a great leader either, or a great follower. Okay, and then the worst category, of course, is people who just show up and do nothing. Okay, they don't support the leader and they don't think for themselves. They just do the minimum required. Okay, that's the worst category of follower. The best category is somebody who thinks for themselves, they act on their own initiative, they support their leader. And when you talk about courageous followership, okay, the best followers will challenge their leaders when they're doing something wrong. Okay, maybe one-on-one in private, not in front of everybody. But if they see their leader doing something questionable, they will challenge them on it. Because they think for themselves. They have their own ideas about what should be going on, and they want to challenge. They're going to say, I think you're doing the wrong thing. What about this? Have you considered that? And the interesting thing, when you pair a servant leader with a group of courageous followers, you get fantastic results. In the book Good to Great, Jim Collins, it's a famous business book. They found a bunch of companies that had been basically floundering along, not doing much, and then suddenly the stock returns were significant for years after. And something happened. They were just not doing very well, and suddenly the stock price started shooting up for a long time. They went and figured out what changed. What happened here at the point where it changed? What caused that? What they found was they had a servant leader. They called it a level 5 leader because they didn't like the term servant leader. But it's basically a servant leader with courageous followers. People who thought for themselves, they argued, and the best ideas win. Okay, so I challenge all of you, don't be audience members. Okay, don't come in and just sit and do the least possible. If you want to change the world, you can start doing that today. You can start saying, hey, okay, I see things that are wrong. Maybe I can do something about them. Okay, at the very least, you can be a supportive follower. So when your team leader says, does anybody want to volunteer to do something? You say, sure, I will. Okay, step up, be willing to serve. Okay, that's the first step. And if you really want to change the world, that's how it starts. Be willing to fix those problems you see. Be willing to support the people who are stepping out there. Okay, when that one guy was out there dancing like a fool. Okay, nobody was doing anything for a long time. He was all alone for a long time in the beginning, and then finally one other person stepped up and joined, and then pretty soon after that a third, and then after that it was an avalanche. So be willing to be that second or third person at least, if you don't feel like you're ready to be the first. Look for places where you can step in and make a difference.